Joel Sherman back with three things. I'm talking to you from a hotel room in Toronto. Tonight, the Blue Jays host the Mariners in what we all love, Game 7s. It's a Game 7 for who wins the AL Championship, who gets to take on the Dodgers in the World Series. I'm looking forward to it, of course. But I wrote about Tarik Skubal over the weekend, nypost.com, if you want to give it a view, and his situation. And so why don't we do three things on Tarik Skubal, starting with number one. Will he be available this offseason? I believe the Tigers, at least quietly, will go around and find out just how crazy somebody would go for him. And look, we'll use the rest of this video at some point to talk about why teams should and maybe have to go crazy if they're going to get him. But unless somebody goes crazy, the Tigers haven't won the World Series since 1984. They've made the playoffs the last 2 years after not doing so for about a decade. And the biggest reason they made the playoffs and the biggest reason they have a shot in the playoffs is they have Tarik Skubal. To me, unless the trade is overwhelming on steroids, you can't make this trade. If you're the Tigers, you're better off just playing it out and seeing how it goes. I don't think the Tigers, how they're constructed with Scott Harris at the top, in their marketplace, and with Scott Boras as the agent for Skubal. Boras almost always takes this kind of great player into the market and lets an open market dictate where it goes. And I can't imagine that my colleague John Heyman wrote that they were about $200 million apart last year. I can't imagine them bridging the gap. So to me, if I'm the Tigers, I at least have to unless I get a trade that the Godfather offer, I just can't say no. I think you got to go into the season, see how your season's going, and if it's a disaster, you could always trade the player in June or July, and I think reap no less than 80 to 90 or even more of a trade that you would get in the offseason. That's how good Skubal is. You know, the risk is, of course, he stays healthy. Why is he worth a lot? Number two. Look, I'll go a little crazy here. If our worst fears about artificial intelligence, AI are true, and it begins to take over, and they say the only way we're not wiping out humanity is we're playing a baseball game for this, the starting pitcher for the human side would be either Paul Skeens or Tarik Skubal, and I think it would be Skubal. He's the best pitcher on the planet. He is a difference maker at the highest level, and to me, you can't trade this player for anything, again, less than substantial return. And the history of these trades, and again, if you read I wrote about this on nypost.com, the history of these trades, pitcher being traded in his walk year, there's one good one out of the last 10 great ones. It just hasn't worked out. Zach Greinke went from Kansas City to Milwaukee. Kansas City got Lorenzo Cain, Alcides Escobar, and they got Jake Odorizzi, who they eventually turned into Wade Davis and James Shields. Besides that, most of these trades have not been the kind where you give up the great starter and you feel good about it. And so unless the Tigers believe that they're going to be the 1 out of 10, it's hard to do. So let's go to number three. The Mets have been mentioned for Tarik Skubal, and the Mets obviously should try to get Tarik Skubal, if not this offseason, if not at the trade deadline if he's available, then next year. This is the might of Steve Cohen, is where is this going? He can probably go there. This is potentially a Hall of Fame bound starter. He's about to win his second Cy Young in a row. But what's the cost? I like to take you to a conversation when I was a very young reporter. I was still covering the Yankees, which I did from 1989 to 95. And I called Billy Beane about a player on his team, one of the best players on his team. And I said, hey, the Yankees, that guy would fit perfect on the Yankees. You're not contending. If the Yankees traded this group of players for that player, would you do it? And Billy Beane taught me a lesson. He said, you just offered me a pile of So I added another player, and he just said, now you've added more And he said, if I trade that player, it's going to be incredibly painful for me. If it isn't equally painful for you, then why even call me? This must be incredibly painful. I'm trading Tarik Skubal. I'm trading the guy I would try to save humanity with against AI. So like if I'm doing that, the pain has to be equal on the other side. And I have seen like mock Met trades, and essentially you don't really get to take players off the table. But if I were the Mets, I'd say Nolan McLean's off the table because I'm hoping Nolan McLean, I've seen him pitch in the major leagues now. And I think he has a shot to be no worse than a number 2 starter and maybe an ace. And for a walkier pitcher, I can't do it. I can't do it. But like I've seen people say, you can't put Carson Benj in the trade. Now, most of the people who've said that have never seen Carson Benj play baseball. And I dare say, if this equal trade were offered in the offseason of 2022 and 23, and we said, hey, it's going to cost Francisco Alvarez, who was then a top 10 prospect in the sport, a top 5 in a lot of places, every Met fans would go crazy and say, well, you can't trade this player. The reality is that most prospects don't flourish to the level that you expect them. And I'm sure the internal belief of the Mets is that like Carson Benj turns out to be a great player. If they really believe that, then don't trade him for a year of Skubal, or put a thing on it that you're willing to meet whatever Scott Boris's price is today to make it worthwhile to trade Benj because you get Skubal for more than a year. But if it's Tarik Skubal, you have to feel equal pain. This can't just be like Brett Beatty, Brandon Sproat, and we'll call you tomorrow with some other names. This has to hurt the Mets or any team. The Yankees, the Dodgers, the Phillies, the Cubs, whoever would want this player has to feel incredible pain to be able to acquire him, because the Tigers drafted this player, they developed this player, they watched this player become a Cy Young Award winner for them, and now they have to trade him at his peak, perhaps. They are going to feel tremendous pain. You can't just put together a poo-poo platter and say, please take our quantity of okay for this. It's my Billy Bean lesson when I offered the pile of what he called and he was right. I look back and I was like thinking like the Yankee side of this. If you're a Met fan or a Dodger fan or a Yankee fan or Philly, whoever you are, don't think about your team. Act like you're the general manager of the Tigers. Would you do it for Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams and, pick your other guys? Is that really enough for Tarik Skubal against trying to win your first championship since 1984, at least begin the season next year? This has to be extremely painful for whoever does this. Otherwise, the Tigers cannot trade the best pitcher in the game.